Mentioned the 40 million was likely to hit this fiscal year. It's not going to hit till later just because of return rates, but we are working with Michigan Department of Treasury. We're actively meeting with the state treasurer. I've had multiple meetings with state senators and state reps. We've met with, like I said, the state treasurer, the CEO of MERS, Carrie Vandenbosch, her staff. We're talking with the governor's office and the state budget office and Michigan Municipal League. The big thing to hit on is, I think I mentioned it yesterday for a second, but House Bill 5054 did pass the House and is now in the Senate. So the big thing that we need to focus on is ensuring the state understands and the governor understands how important that legislation is. And what it does is, I have notes on the exact breakdown here. All right, so House Bill, so that was on March 1st, the House passed House Bill 5054, and that provides $1.15 billion in state fund resources to be utilized for direct assistance to municipalities to help pay down any pension debt. There's two parts of the program. One is $900 million to be used to bring all pensions that are less than 60% funded up to 60% funded. And then a separate $250 million provided to pensions that are 60% funded or greater as part of a comprehensive solution. Our problem, though, council member, is this legislation at the moment is capped at a grant of $100 million, and we need $250 million at least to bring our pension payment down to an affordable range.
So, if this do not pass, what is the alternative? for us as a municipality. Do you guys have a plan B or plan C? Or are you guys counting on this bill to be passed? My second question is it possible that you can give me and my colleagues a copy of the House Bill 5054 so we can have for our records to just review that bill?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just taking notes. We can definitely get you a copy of that, and then there's sometimes 1 or 2 page summaries that'll help out. So I can get copies of that. Plan B. Well,
Real quick, if I may, point of information to Mr. Murphy. I did send, probably in the middle of March, I did send everybody links to independent studies about HB 5054, and then also the language itself. So probably March, like 15th or 16th, around there. There are different links and stuff too.
Madam Chair, point of order.
Councilman Mays, you have
If
the floor,
we're
sir.
going to allow that, don't let it happen in a point of information. Just allow it. That wouldn't been more a point of information than the man in the moon.
Thank you, Councilman Mays, and to my colleagues, and to Mr. Whittigan and your staff. I apologize for being late. I did call Councilwoman Priestley. I've been on the phone with her this afternoon, but unfortunately, we had a shooting in my ward. So there were some things that need to be taken care of. So, Councilman Murphy, to your House bill, I can get you the information. I do also have it, Councilwoman Herkenroder, but you said you did also forward it. But I will make sure you get that also in regard to that. But I do know that, I don't know if Councilwoman Priestley got into it. Mr. Whittigan, I believe we meet with you next week, her and I together.
Correct.
And the $250 million you had stated would be the minimum, that $100 million wouldn't help. But on March 12th, I believe we're going to have a meeting so we can get into more depth, Councilman Murphy, in regards to the MERS and the legacy cost, because that is a meeting alone, and it's very in-depth. Yes.
if okay, I can answer his question on
Yes,
Plan B.
yes, you have the floor,
Okay.
Mr. Whittigan.
So, and again, the chair said, we'll walk you through this on May 12th. But so this isn't anything new, right? And what I mean by that is, and I can send you guys a copy of this. In April of 2017, when I was flipping through RTAB minutes, the then CFO, Dave Sabuda, had a frank conversation with the RTAB saying, if we don't do anything today, we can't continue to move forward come 2022. Well, we are in 2022, and unfortunately, to be frank, what the state did was nothing but kick the can down the road. There was the pension smoothing, which lowered our payment for a temporary time. I've had conversations with MERS that there's really not much more we can do, and they can go into detail on this when they're here. As it comes to the pension payment, we have to start getting this caught up. Being 28% funded is just not feasible. The state essentially kicked the can down the road, and we've shared the data with them. We've shared this budget with them. MERS took the time to do lump sum scenarios, and I can give you a copy of that. They're from 2021, so the numbers could have changed. But they did scenarios where if we wrote them a check for $100 million, $150, $193, $200, $250, what would your payment be? And the only payment that was sustainable was if we gave them a check for $250 million. That's how far we are into this mess, that it's going to take, $250 million to make things sustainable. So unfortunately, due to actions of the emergency managers in the state, I think Plan B, C, and D were utilized back in 2017. We're at a situation where the state, as you said, the state needs to act.
So to follow up with my thought, I feel, part of me feel that the emergency manager came into the city of Flint and made things worse from the water crisis, and not only the water crisis, to this pension liability costs that we've been having even when they came in, and now we here. And part of me believe, you know, and it could, it just can be an alleged that the emergency manager was not really here to come to deal with the finance, but to come here to, like you said, dissolve the city of Flint and make it regionalize our city. And here we are in this discussion years later after they done left, and that's an issue. And what I think we need to do, and I think we need to look at, even with the bond issue being that we got a bond that we entered into, being that we should have never entered into this bond with the KWA, being that we were already in a fiscal issue when it comes down to us having financial problems. So if we already have financial problems, my concern is, why did we even enter into a bond to broker the deal with the KWA, for one? For two, if they knew that we had issues with our pension, why would you transfer us from one place to put us in another place to make it even worse today? And we having this, they knew that this was coming, and I remember coming to the meetings where they told us that we were going to be projected to have to look at this, and like you said, kick the can down the road. They knew the can down the road was what we discussing today, so that's another issue. My other concern is, if we in that type of predicament, and the mayor office came to us in one department, a $739,931 increase. The other department, $95,584. The city administrator office, $113,000 increase. It seemed like that would be a concern to you too, as the finance person, that with us having this projected $16 million deficit, why such a big significant amount of increase in the mayor's budget? And I really wanted to see a detailed budget with the mayor's office as far as who was getting paid out of the general funds, who was getting paid out of the grant funds. So I wanted to see an organizational chart when it comes down to the mayor's office as far as how many 8 employees that he have, the 5 per charter, and then who are funded through grants, so we can get an idea of where all of this money is coming from. My other piece with the ARPA dollars, have you looked at the ARPA dollars to see where we could replace some of those funds that's eligible with ARPA dollars, to be able to move that funds to cover the, and I know we can't use ARPA dollars to cover any of the pension. That's, we cannot do that. But it just seemed like you can go from each department, from the police department, the fire department, the mayor's office, the clerk office, I'm not sure, to see how you can substitute some of those fundings with eligible dollars of the ARPAs to free up some of that money to be able to move it. That's my question. And I had a question for the water, no, I know, the wind funds. Could you talk about the wind funds when it comes down to how much wind funds do we have left? What did we start with? Could you update us on the wind funds to let us know where we at on the wind dollars when it comes down to this service line replacement? Because we got a lot of different talks out there about the wind funds is here, the wind funds is not here. So just could you educate us on where we at with those dollars? And that's it right now for me right now.
So I'll start with the revenue loss. So yes, per Treasury guidelines, for the provision of government services, to the extent the reduction in revenue was due to the pandemic, we can utilize, dollars to do what you said. So the budget was prepared without consideration of utilizing the ARPA dollars, as we're still going through the overall prioritization and planning process for the ARPA funds. And as you know, we can consider budget amendments as appropriate or as needed. But for example, we could pay for something that's a government service, like you said, and then free up the expenditure for other uses. I believe in the police hearing, Councilman Mays had actually inquired if ARPA funds would qualify to be used for general fund equipment and officer expenses for FY23. And the answer on that is yes, to the extent that there was a tax revenue loss. You're right, it's not going to solve the problem, right? I mean, I think I mentioned you could dump the full 94 million in, and it's, in a few years, you're still belly up, right? But what it does allow us to do is buys us a couple of years. I mean, we all know the state's not, what they start working on today is not going to happen tomorrow. So there may be a situation where the state's close to a solution, a legislative solution, but we need to buy a couple of years, freeing up expenses now so that we're good to go. And that is a possibility that we're going to have to monitor and discuss as we go through. To the WIN, I wrote that question down. I don't have that right. We don't have that right in front of us. So what I'm hearing is how much we have left and where do we start. What I'll do is we'll get that for you. We'll share it with all of council, and we can also put it on the finances website so that members of the public can also see the question that you're asking with the answer.
Are you done, Mr. Whittigan? Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilman Mays, are you?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilman, Ms. Herkenroder did have the floor before you. I
I
apologize.
didn't even know that.
She did.
Because you
When
wasn't here, I didn't know that.
She just notified me. So when she's done, Mr. Councilman Mays, then you'll have the floor, sir. Ms. Herkenroder, Councilwoman Herkenroder, you have the floor.
Let me be excused for a second.
Yes, you're excused.
Thank you guys so much for being here. Thanks for answering the questions thus far. So I hosted a town hall last week with 7th Ward residents to be able to help ask questions regarding this budget. So the questions that I'm about to ask, these are not my questions necessarily. These are that from the 7th Ward specifically, although they do align pretty closely to some of my questions. So the first question is in regards to the staffing chart on page 54. I'll give you guys a second to flip there. But in the proposal, there is a staffing change of an additional 12 people in the finance department, or excuse me, of an increase in staffing to 12 people in the financing department. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the main reason for that is this goes directly to attacking our audit findings. So one of the audit finding was decentralized accountants. There's accountants scattered in every department. So the auditors would like to see these accountants housed in finance, and then in a perfect world you have, I don't know, let's call it 3 auditors or 3 accountants, and one's assigned police department, fire department. So if the fire department, police department needs help or has questions, they come to finance. One of the other positions that we're trying to get on board is a payroll backup. We literally have 1 human that does payroll. So if something happens, just retirement or something tragic happens, I can make payroll, but it might not be right. So we really need backup there. So the main thing is, look, we had what, 8, 9 audit findings? I want to at least come back to you and say we've knocked down 3 or 4, and then just keep ticking those off. So the staffing helps with that, and then 2 is backup for essential
Okay.
positions like finance or payroll.
That's what I thought, but I
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure. So then I guess a follow-up question to that is in regards to the audit findings and the restructuring, which we understand needs to happen. Do you have the idea about how that's going to look necessarily departmentally?
For like the accountants?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, I mean, we had police accountant retire, right? And we set up a call with Chief Green and said, hey, here's our idea. The audit keeps hitting us on it. Would you be okay with us bringing the accountant position over here? And then they're going to work closely with you. So, was it 3? We're looking at 3 accountants? Okay, so like a 1 supervisor and 3 accountants would then work with each department through their budget and any accounting needs that they have, if that
Okay.
answers your question.
Okay, yes, no, that's helpful, thank you. And then another resident, I don't know if this number is an easy number to get off the top of your head or if this needs to be sent through an email. What's the current reserve? Do we have a current reserve?
Fund balance?
See?
The fund balance reserve?
Yes, I believe
Okay.
that's what they were implying. Like, these were taken straight from what residents asked me.
So 21 actual, according to the audit, was $22,939,367.
Okay, perfect, thank you. And then this question, again, I'm not sure if this is an easy, one-off question too, but we know that we have a loss in population, which we also know is going to impact our state funding. And we currently have a water and a sewer system, among other things, that is designed for a city of 200,000 plus, and we know that we're working with 82,000 people. In a perfect world, in order to get a balanced budget, how many residents does our city need to be able to get there?
That is a really intuitive question from a 7th Ward resident. To probably get you the exact amount, we definitely have to circle back on that. But
Okay.
You are correct that, we're running a 200,000 population style city with 82,000 people. It doesn't help. And to hit on the revenue thing, revenue sharing, half of our revenue sharing, or part of our revenue sharing comes from population. So the state did pass a hold harmless supplemental in their budget for this upcoming fiscal year to keep us the same. However, that's not a reoccurring fund. So we could see losses in revenue sharing of up to $2 million in 2024, 2025, which doesn't help anything.
Okay. And then I did also have, very similar to my colleague in the 3rd Ward, I had a lot of questions regarding the pension. You did answer a significant number of those, which I do appreciate. And so I guess my final question, and this is more of a me question than an anything question, do we have any projections or estimations about how much revenue was lost that we can supplement with ARPA dollars?
Yeah, 35 million, right? Yes. So, I know I keep saying this, but we're, soon we're going to have the ARPA presentation
Right.
with everyone. But right now, according to revenue loss, it looks like we're looking at being able to utilize up to 35 million. We're not recommending that all goes towards that because,
Did you say 35 million?
Correct.
Okay.
so it came down to how the guidelines wanted to calculate or not calculate state and federal grants. And they excluded federal, kept state? Yeah, so federal grants don't count, but state grants did, and that's where it really jacked up our numbers. So I think if you took that out, if you took out the grants, it's, only like 3 to 8 million, like I had said before, if you're looking at just strictly city, like income tax loss and whatnot. But, so up to 35 million. We're not, again, we want to use ARPA to benefit the citizens long-term, so we're not going to come in here and recommend we take all that.
Right.
But
Right.
that's what we could do.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Councilman Mays, you have the floor, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Amanda, I'm going to end up asking you to come up before I get done here, but what I'm looking at, Mr. Whittaker, I want to stick with what I think is before us. And what I see before us on page, I think, 16 of this general fund handout, I see revenue in 2023 of $50,700,000, correct?
Correct.
And I see expenditures of 64,800,000, correct?
Correct.
So this administration has submitted a budget to us close to $14–15 million in spending more than what we're taking in this fiscal year, correct?
Yeah, correct, 14.1 million.
Yeah, knowing that we're facing a $15 million projected deficit in the next fiscal year, and I say to myself, you don't wait to the fiscal year or to the train wreck.
I'm sorry?
No, I'm sorry. I just want to be polite. You don't wait until the train wreck hit and try to cut the deficit. You try to do that last year and this year. Now, I don't know what this council will do, but you took the position early in the year that council can't bring a resolution after adoption of the budget dealing with proposed changes and amendments. You took that position in front of this council, correct?
I believe what I said was spending resolutions come from the mayor's office.
And I disagree with you. I believe this council can bring resolutions dealing with money and spending all throughout the year. So it's true that we disagreed, but in fact, right now, everything is on the table. Every department, every fund, correct?
As we go through the budget, yeah.
Yeah. And so since everything is on the table now, under the final rules, lost revenue category, 10 million, I call it the IRS just for a better lack of description. I call it the easy form. Any lost revenue over 10 million, I call it the long form for those who do taxes. That's a fair statement. You understand my point? Ms. Ryan, do you? Ms. Ryan, have we looked at our lost revenue? I've heard it to be estimated at $36 million. Do you or Mr. Whittigan know at this time?
We've done calculations for the first couple of years.
And what did you come up with?
As you mentioned, the 35 million, that's including the state revenues, but when we took some of those out because it was.
Microphone.
Sorry. The initial calculation was 35 million, but if you adjust for some of those state revenues that were kind of one-time items, it became like 8 million for the first year.
Okay. And I don't know the rules as it relates to getting 8 million in this fiscal year and calculating it into the amended budget. I'm predicting there'll be amendments, but I don't know with this group. I just don't know. I'm almost throwing my hands up, but I'm going to do my job. My job is this. Lost revenue, Mr. Whittigan. Ernst & Young, if y'all done calculated it, we need to have that figure for this fiscal year so we can amend the budget to deal with lost revenue. And then when it comes to crime prevention, the police department is 29 million. If you look at the overall budget, 29 million with police and fire, that's the bulk of the general fund budget. If you can save 15 million from, if you can save the general fund 15 million and we can use ARPA funds for crime prevention in any of those areas, when do you propose that Ernst & Young will let us know? Do you already know?
So we're finalizing, we've met with your ad hoc, your council ad hoc, ARPA committee. So we're getting council's input, right, to make sure it's included in our plan.
Let me do it this way. Through you, Madam Chair, to Ms. Priestley, you know the amount of crime prevention money, since he say he met with you, that we can use to offset the police budget?
We did through Ms. Burns to you, Ms. Councilman Mays, We talked about the timeline as to when those numbers are scheduled to be ready. At this point, those dollars, at the time of our meeting, those dollars had not been developed. They were still working on them throughout the entire city.
And when was that meeting?
I told you about that. That was 2 weeks ago?
Okay, back to you, Mr. Whittaker. So the answer is without including the ad hoc committee that I appointed, without including that, you don't have any numbers yet, or do you?
We're finalizing those now,
When will they be finalized? Do you know?
hopefully within a couple of weeks,
In a couple of weeks, that'll
presented to council,
beg your pardon?
and presented to council with.
The
your
whole
input.
council.
No, I'm trying to say, hopefully we're working with the goal of getting before you very quickly with your input and the administration's input with the final numbers for us to discuss.
The administration has presented a budget. Right now, we have the opportunity to amend that budget. We paying a firm $1 million to do a certain job, hopefully in a timely manner. The $15 million projected deficit to keep emergency managers out is the highest priority financially for me. If in 2 weeks, you think we'll have the information I'm requesting here? What's the date today? Beg your pardon? What's the date today?
It's April the 21st.
So in 2 weeks, we'll be in May, correct?
Yeah, what date are you looking for?
He's
Council?
saying 2 weeks. 2 weeks from today, even if we went with Monday and gave them 2 weeks, it would be the middle of May.
So you're
That's
looking
when
at May 5th.
That's when you anticipate that we will have the information.
We will get it to you timely. We'll work with the ad hoc committee and the finance chair to get that set up.
Mr. Whittaker, I appointed the ad hoc committee. I'm interested in the council. An ad hoc committee can't amend the budget. Every time you come before me so far, it seems like you don't really get it. This is the council. I'm not interested in the ad hoc. We're in budget process now. You say in 2 weeks, could we have the information? Do you know? What's the answer to that? Forget the ad hoc committee. Talk to the council as a whole.
I believe, if I'm correct, Madam Chair, that the focus of this is more the general budget and then department heads?
Yeah, this budget is for the general. We are not discussing the ARPA funds. He's asking you how to offset it, so we'll tie into that.
Yeah,
Do
we
you,
will.
now, is it possible you can
Madam
answer
Chair.
Councilman May's question regarding I believe, May 5th date, within 2 weeks, that you'll be able to have an answer for him to present to the council?
Yes, we'll get
Okay, that's what I want to
Thank
hear.
you.
Madam Chair, Mr. Whittaker, let me explain something to you. If I'm talking to you, wouldn't it be fair and proper to talk to me rather than deviate to the chair? You could have told me yes. But I'm sensing each time I come to you, you're elusive and somewhat disrespectful to me. That's just me. I could be wrong. So now let's move forward. So you're telling me in a couple weeks, Ernst & Young and you are going to be and looked at the police budget, the $29 million, and you'll come back in 2 weeks and tell me what areas the ARPA funds can maybe cover or replace. That's the understanding that you just said yes to?
The goal is with those numbers that it's going to look at revenue loss and see areas like crime prevention, which would alleviate general fund expenses.
Revenue loss is a separate category. Crime prevention is another category. I don't want to mix them two together. Ms. Ryan, do you understand my question? Since you want to go to the chair, I'm going to go to Ms. Ryan.
Yes, I
I'm
understand.
going to get an interpreter. Ms. Ryan, do you understand my question?
I understand your question, though I'm a little confused about, are you saying like to just remove those services from the general fund? Like, we're paying for government services is what revenue loss
Can
is
you,
for?
yeah, can you? thank you.
But we do have a separate bucket of things we want to do for crime prevention that are in addition to what the city already does.
And I do too. We're on the same page there. But the revenue loss, if it's 10 million, 8 million, 11 million, or 35 million, that's a separate pot. We might can get that. And do you know whether or not that can go, you or Mr. Whittigan, into the general fund?
Yes, it can
I believe that it
cover
could
those
too.
services.
So now we got that pot of money. Now go to crime prevention. Do you know whether or not Mr. Whittigan and or Ms. Ryan, that crime prevention ARPA dollars can or cannot pay for salaries and personnel? I'm hearing it can't. Do you know if it can or can't?
Yeah, so as mentioned earlier, to the extension that there was tax revenue loss, it can cover general fund expenditures such as you had referred to in the police department.
And I'm referring to salaries and or certain personnel. You're saying that your information tells you now that it can.
Yeah, the answer on that would be yes, to the extent that we have tax revenue loss. I know you said separate, but I'm just going by what the rules say.
Yeah, well, I don't want to look at that category because that'll already be covered. That would be like double dipping. Am I missing something, Ms. Bryant?
It sounds like you're saying you want to use revenue loss to cover some services and then the additional bucket of crime prevention to cover some additional police services.
Yeah, the revenue loss dollars, I want to try to keep it in the general fund until we can see what's going to happen with that $15 million projected deficit for next year. I see.
You will have to identify what services that revenue loss money is covering.
So it don't go in the general fund.
It goes in the general fund, but we have to be able to report and say this is to pay specifically for these government services.
So when you report it, it don't have to go into them, out of the general fund into those services. I'm trying to capture it in the general fund.
Yes, you can transfer it to the general fund as revenue, but we would have to report that say it's
Well, that's
covering,
fine.
say, these police, these fire, whatever services, so you wouldn't be able to use those same services a second time.
Right, so that's the reporting aspect. I understand that. 11 million goes into the general fund, report where it's the lost revenue from whatever department, that's over and done with. It ain't no mandate to put it back into them services, correct? Do either one of y'all understand the question? We know we can get it in the general fund.
Council Mays, I'm kind of, point of information, and I think because I'm looking at their faces and they're perplexed, and you're stating like a specific breakdown with removing it. Can you restate that
See,
again?
I think the answer I'm looking for is no. Maybe they losing some in the translation. What's being said is, if you look at certain departments and categories, you document where the revenue loss was at.
Right.
1 million here, 3 million there. Once you document it, then you can move that money into the general fund. Now, it's sitting there, whether it's 10 million or 11 million. The follow-up question that I think the answer is going to be no, is you don't have to take it and piece it back into them areas.
No, yes, absolutely.
See, that's the
Okay.
answer that I
So-
thought
So
it
for
would
example,
be.
if the revenue loss was for water and sewer, you don't have to put it
That's
towards water and
correct.
sewer.
So water and sewer, is that an eligible category?
Water and sewer infrastructure, yes.
Amanda, through you, Madam Chair, to Amanda. That's where she comes in at.
She's got to come down the Price is Right aisle.
Now,
So-
let's go back while she walking that long, lonely walk. Let's go back to the police department. Are you prepared to tell me today, Mr. Whittigan, that certain salaries and personnel is eligible expenditure for ARPA funds? We know, Ms. Ryan, that there are some other areas such as cameras and different stuff that we might look at. I'm not at that point yet. I'll try to get budget amendments for that and see if it passed. But now on the basic stuff that's there, do y'all know at this point eligible expenditures?
So are you asking if ARPA dollars could qualify for things like equipment or officer expenses?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Overall
that's-
answer, yes.
Then we should be in good shape. The question for this council is going to be, what type of amendments do they want to do as it relates to this budget? This council could take the easy way out and bring no amendments. And then they could wait throughout the year and let the administration just bring amendment after amendment. That's not the posture that I'm taking. And so I know that the ARPA funds and certain parameters were known as people worked on this budget. That did not come forth in this budget at all. And even at this point, without me asking these specific questions, to me, the administration, even in our process of amendment, is not coming forth with amendments that they would request we make. See, that's the politics of the budget, I call it. The politics of the budget is the council can amend it, or they can sit and wait on the administration to bring amendment after amendment. My posture is, regardless of what 5 or more council people do, my job is to bring amendments. And I've asked the legal department to start working on them for each department. Now, the reason I think this was relevant conversation in this 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. hearing is because it says general budget. And when we're talking about the general budget, particularly the general fund, that's where I go to the proposed 2023. And I started off by saying, I see 50 million in revenue and 64 million in expenditures. And I don't believe we should be spending 14 million more. And then the administration brags, no layoffs, no personnel cuts. I don't believe we have to with ARPA funds, but I believe we can adopt an amended budget to fix that $15 million projected deficit, and that we should. Through you, Madam Chair, to Amanda. Amanda, there was a time a year or two back that the mayor and administration ordered no shutoffs, correct? How long a period was that? We need a microphone.
Can you hear me? Began in September or October of 2019.
Of 2019.
Yes.
That's when Mr. Neely ordered no shutoffs, to the best of your knowledge.
No, that's when Mayor Weaver, we stopped it at that time.
So I thought that Mr. Neely was saying that he was the first. So it's a fact, and I knew it when I heard it. Ms. Weaver ordered no shutoffs. At some point after that, Mr. Neely came and ordered no shutoffs. Do you know
Yes.
around
Yes.
what year and month that was?
That would have been in November of 19.
When Mr. Neely ordered no
Yes.
shutoffs. The pandemic didn't hit to around March 20th, didn't it?
That's correct.
I thought he had ordered no shutoffs for the public health and safety of the pandemic.
Well, he did it was like a 100-day moratorium when he first was elected, and then that ended like in February, and that's when we were going to start doing shutoffs again, and then the pandemic began, so.
And so
It just stopped. I mean, we just never started back up again.
So from that point that you've just identified up until what, recently, shutoff have now started back?
Yes, in January.
They started back when?
January of 2022.
shut-off started in January of
Yeah.
2022.
Yes,
January, February, March, April. So for 3 months, there's been shut-offs
yes,
for non-payment.
yes.
I didn't have a clue. I had heard there would be shut-offs for people who didn't let people in the house to do meters.
We're doing that also.
But I listened to Mr. Neely talk on 1420 AM and on Sam Riddle's show. It kind of chokes me up too, Mr. Whitaker. And on Sam Riddle's show, and I thought I stayed astute.
No, I
So
was on-
January,
Yeah.
people been getting shut off.
Right, but I was on the mayor's radio show and informed the
I
public.
heard you on that.
Yeah, that we were doing shut-offs.
And so my position is if you don't shut somebody off for 2 years or more, and then abruptly you start shutting them off rather than give them a 6-month or even some way to ease back in, that's problematic. It's not problematic for me. I'm going to pay mine. But when they wasn't shutting off, I didn't pay. And it's a lot of people like me. How much lost revenue would that be? Do you know?
We would be bringing in, I mean, like 3 million a month, and we need to bring in like at least 5 million a month.
So we were bringing in about 5 million a month, and when there were no shut-offs, we were bringing in about how much a month on an average?
Probably right around 5 million a month.
So we were
But then we
bringing
were
in,
we were at like 98% collection rate, and right now we are finally back up to about 82%.
yeah, so the lost revenue in water and sewer would be estimated to be what now? Do you know?
Question again?
I think they told me that lost revenue in water and sewer is eligible for ARPA fund lost revenue, correct, Mr. Whitaker? Do
Yeah.
you guys know, beg your pardon?
I'm trying to remember. I believe one of those two was not eligible as part of the calculation, and the other one was.
Either water or sewer.
Yeah.
And that's what I need, good information, because we got budget amendments to make. When can we zero in on which one is eligible and which one is not? When can we get that?
I can look that up.
Look
Yeah.
that up, and then that'll be important. And then I know y'all work closely with the treasurer. Amanda, you're the treasurer. I want a figure of the eligible category, the one that's eligible, how much of lost revenue that was. Now, don't include my $3,000 so bill. I'm going to pay it. You think I'm going to pay it, Amanda?
Yes, you will.
Because I will pay it.
I just wanted to note that when we do that lost revenue calculation, that doesn't include bad debt. So we would still be recording the revenue even though people aren't paying it, so that wouldn't necessarily show up in the revenue loss calculation.
I understand what you've just said, Ms. Ryan. And you know, Mr. Whittigan got so much to do in finance, and I know that the deputy sometime, Mr. Whittigan, looks at details, and that's why you keep him as a deputy. So don't be offended, because I'll go to the deputy as you sit here and so forth and so on. So those police articles that I'm asking about, and I don't know in fire, because police and fire is the two big general fund bites. Rich Jones always done articulated balancing water accounts. And I'm hearing what you're saying about the debt and the lost revenue. But whatever it is, I've got a duty and a responsibility to people. And it's a dilemma, Amanda, because some people paid their bills and then some didn't. And you want to be fair to those who did. That's my view. You got to be fair to those who did. You can't just do for those like me and others who didn't and forget about those who did. Now, in being polite to my colleagues, You see what path I'm on. When it comes to lost revenue, which personnel in them big departments, even though I'm still waiting for information from the mayor's department on details, itemized budgets for each department. Mr. Whittigan, to the best of your knowledge, if I'm doing responsible amendments, wouldn't it be difficult for me to know where to cut, who to cut, and how much to cut if I don't have itemized information?
In the back of the budget book, in the far back,
Okay, hold on, let's get there.
and I do see that we need to
I
add
see it.
page numbers to that. There is more detail, which, it'll give you something, instead of just police budget, it will break it down and say Patrol Bureau Administration's 9.5 million.
I see it, and
So-
that is a little more detail.
Right.
So you should have been here when Mr. Neely and them was stuttering around talking about answer questions in writing, and directed us to that. So maybe y'all should have been the first department before police and fire. Start with the bigger budget. Mr. Whittigan, do you believe we can take care of this projected deficit by making amendments and using ARPA funds in this budget so we could have a bigger fund balance at the end of the fiscal year? Wouldn't you, don't you believe that? Or I don't want to put words in your mouth.
So, let me give you a long-winded answer.
Because I already know what I'm going to say you can do, what I can do. I just want to see what you say. But I already know what I can do. I don't have to ask, but go ahead.
So two parts. One, on the cusp, according to the rules, yes, we can alleviate expenditures with ARPA to the extent there's lost revenue, and replace that and try to make things whole. But one thing I just want to say, and I'm sure we all get this, but I want to make sure the public gets it, and it's going to be repeated a lot of times before we're done. Let me be clear. As you know, we don't face a negative $15 million deficit problem. That's not what we have. What we have is a $250 million plus problem.
Let me stop you there. We're facing a projected $15 million general fund deficit in the next fiscal year. The $250 million obligation that we have for pensions and stuff ain't due in a lump sum. It's due in payments, whether they 30,000, 40,000, 40,000, 30 million, 40 million. They're due each year. They're payments. And nobody is asking us to pay $250 million in a lump sum to catch it up, correct? That's correct.
If we don't, we're just going to keep having this deficit year over year.
Let me say this, Mr. Whittigan. You go buy a $300,000 house, so you got payments. They don't ask you to pay the $300,000 off. We've got $250 million in those liabilities. And we pay payments, whether the payment is $30 million, $40 million, $20 million, or whatever. I don't want you, Mr. Neely, and this administration to confuse the pension obligations with the general fund for these residents. My job is to make it clear. Now, if you had to pay $40 million in pension liabilities, that's a lot. If you paid $10 million in pension liabilities on a year, that's less. The reality is we ain't paying $10 million. We got to pay $30 million, $40 million to keep up. Correct, Ms. Ryan? And I know it's correct. And when we spend 30 to 40 million, it takes away from the general fund, police, fire, and other services. So you ain't talking to somebody who don't understand that. I just don't want y'all to keep throwing that out when we are facing a $15 million projected general fund deficit. Are you sitting here telling me that the next fiscal year we're not facing a $15 million general fund deficit? You're not saying that, are you?
2024, we face a $15 million general fund deficit. In 2025, if there's no fixed to pension, it goes up to 35 million, and it just compounds.
So let's stop there. I don't want a $15 million deficit, and I don't want to trust this administration. I want to trust this council to do some amendments with lost revenue, ARPA funds. I want this council to do amendments where ARPA funds can replace general fund money in police, fire, whatever, and I want to alleviate with council action that projected deficit and lock that money down. This administration is trying to spend 14 million more than we take in this year, and it's hidden in a lot of areas. Well, I'll keep it hidden there, but I've got colleagues who say, I won't spend a dime until we budget it all. Well, I got news for some of my colleagues, and Ms. Ms. Priestley, I'm gonna give you the floor. I got news for them. Lost revenue, crime prevention, spend it before the money is budgeted or spent wrong by this administration, council, or whoever. This is the priority. We've got 30 days or so to make the proper budget amendments to help save this city from a projected deficit. You can't do a budget in an hour. It would take time to go through these categories, Ms. Ryan. I'll do it. We'll bring amendments. The legal department have a duty to draw them up, and we really should have staff here taking notes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Amanda, I've never had a problem talking with you, and I don't think we'll have one now. Mr. Whittigan, Ms. Ryan, if I need some information between now and call back on May 12th, I'm going to attempt to get it from your office. Mr. Woodson whispered in my ear, and I see him making signs. That wind fund money, when can we get details on that? What are you doing here? But Mr. Woodson, what is the question you want to know? Where can you find? You're not going to find that in the budget. This is mainly general fund.
Well, it goes beyond general fund, but grant, wins a grant.
Ain't going to be in
And
there.
it's not in here, right?
So we want a breakdown of what you know
Next week.
and bring that to us. And it's the same way with block grant money, correct?
Right, that's not.
Yeah, when we deal in budgets, we mainly concentrating on general fund. But, you know, when the public look and you hear and participate, I don't want you frustrated. I just want to try to show you something. We'll get that. Madam Chair, thanks. You see where I'm headed with this budget and amendments? Is it something you want to say?
All I'll say is, I see what you're saying, but, yes, if the council wants to bring amendments, if you think you need to cut this down from 64 million in expenditures, fine.
General fund.
In general fund. But what I'm trying to say to you is, we could do it right now if we go to the back of the book. Patrol Bureau, the administration, which is your payroll for patrol, that's 9 million. And I'm talking drastically here. And firefighting division, that's payroll for firefighters, that's 9 million. We could eliminate that. You get an $18 million savings. You're going to add to your fund balance. But the problem is, no police, no fire. This is a drastic scenario, okay? The problem is, if we don't do the lump sum payment to MERS, okay, you're going to have to cut another 15 million the year after. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Let me say this, Mr. Whittigan. The lump sum payment for MERS is included in this proposed budget, correct?
No. If there was a lump
Okay.
sum payment, there would not be a deficit.
So you, hold up. You telling me in this proposed budget, hold up, I need your attention. You telling me in this proposed budget there's no payment to merge? There's no payment for MERS. And if
Yep.
it is, how much?
We definitely don't want to say that. I don't need to bring
Well,
up the
that's
MERS
what
board.
you were saying
There
to me.
is a payment to MERS.
How much?
Of what, 40 million? 32 million in 23 and 40 million in 24.
Okay, so hold up. If we leave this budget the same, that payment will still be in there. The only difference is that the general fund money would be replaced by some ARPA funds.
And I don't disagree, okay? But again, as I said, the ARPA funds would more be used to buy us time, right?
That's
The ARPA
okay.
funds-
You
Right.
ever been took over by emergency manager? We do want to buy time. We really want to buy forever.
Right,
I'm
and
just
to buy
saying.
forever, we need a long-term.
We
fixed
know
expense.
that though, Mr. Whittaker. And so while bills is passing in Lansing, while Big Shots is working on legislation, we got to deal with what's in front of us now. I knew it was a budget presented with a MERS payment in it. Nothing would change. The personnel would stay the same, no layoffs. The services allocations would stay the same. And Ms. Ryan, you're right. In addition to replacing that with ARPA funds, we would also do some additional crime prevention. So, Mr. Whittaker, for the city I represent and the people that I'm representing, public safety and blight is number one and number two. Budgets and deficits is right at the top. So I'm not interested in having a deficit and waiting till next year to try to fix it. I want to fix it this year and next year. And I'm not confused about nothing I said, and I don't want you trying to confuse the public. I think it's clear. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you,
Let
Mr.
me be
Mays.
excused for a second.
You're excused. Mr. Pfeiffer, you wanted the floor.
Thank you. Thank you guys for being here. Amanda, real quick. Amanda? Amanda, I just have one quick question, and then, and I'll, just so I know you were going in the back. I know you said that shutoffs have begun. When are the late payments going to start accruing again?
What we're doing right now, can you hear me? We are going by cycles. There's 8 residential cycles that's how we bill, and we are doing it by cycle because we don't have enough staff to do more than what we're doing right now because we're only doing 80 a week. We don't
80,
turnoffs
okay.
because we don't have the capacity to do more. Because back, pre-pandemic, we were doing like 300 a week. So we're just doing it cycle by cycle. What I'm doing is we're sending out a shut-off notice when the regular bill's going out, so they're all due on the same day. And then that way they have that 2 weeks that they know that they're gonna, we're gonna turn them off. And then it's like about, a couple days after the due date that we start turning them off.
So, if somebody doesn't pay in a month or 2 months or whatever, when are those penalties going to start?
Oh, the penalties start 30 days after the due date. I mean, that's how it's always been, if they don't make a payment.
Because I pay once a quarter and I don't get any fees.
That sounds strange to me, but I'd have to check your account. But I mean, it should be 30 days. But if you are, hold on a second, let me see. I believe that if you are paying your account regularly, you shouldn't get any fees. But I'd have to check and see if you're staggering yours.
I just think it's a lost revenue column if we don't start accruing the penalties. What is it, 1%, 0.5%, whatever?
0.5%.
0.5%, whatever it is. I think it's a revenue dollar that we should start capitalizing on. So can you check to see why those aren't accruing?
Yes, because I know that we had, and this was pre-pandemic when we were doing it, there was if people pay their current bill plus 10%, then they didn't get a penalty on that prior balance that's still sitting there. And I'll have to see what if we're still that time frame is.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Whittigan, can you explain to me why we have a dramatic drop in charges for services? Almost, I mean,
5.5
5 million.
5.5.
Can you explain that?
I can explain that. So it's because we changed the way we do our indirect costs.
Can we change it back?
So it's actually offset in the expense. Our net for indirect cost in the general fund actually goes up. So it's hard to see in the details, but I do have the numbers with me. So in the 2022 budget, there was 9.4 million for revenue for indirect costs, but then 9 million for expense. So
Can
it
you-
was only about 400,000 coming to the general fund for indirect costs. Whereas in the 23 budget, there's actually 6.2 million in revenue, which is less, but there's also only 4 million in expense. So we're actually bringing in 2 million.
Why are we changing that?
So it hasn't been updated in a very long time, so we updated it to be more in line with where the cost actually should be going. And then we also started netting things, so we didn't have that duplication in the revenue and expense, so it was a little cleaner.
Basically, we're trying to do housekeeping that hasn't been done, just, I mean, it's no one's fault, just turnover, and a couple CFOs ago was focused on the water crisis, so we're just doing housekeeping.
Okay. I'm a little confused on that, but
If you have any more questions on it after this, just let us know, and we can get it to the whole council, so you guys try to clean it up or explain it more.
okay. Given the current state of the economy and wages rising, everyone hiring, looking for work, why are we projecting, I know everybody's talking about a potential crash or whatever else, but we can't project that, so why are we projecting less income tax? Because I know my income tax ain't going down.
Neither is mine. I sent in a nice check.
So why are we projecting that less?
The main driver,
Almost 10% less.
the main driver is working from home. So one, we had issues with the pandemic, right? Everyone was sent home that worked downtown. And then going forward, we're estimating that there'll be a lot more work from home. And also, we have a population loss of.
But work from home isn't less income. You're saying that people that worked in the city, that lived out county, are now, like, we're having 10% of those people are going away?
Is it 10%? So it's basically, what I'm trying to, yeah, so it's those who work in the city and don't live in the city. So you have a lot of, between the colleges and hospitals, we have a lot that don't live here.
But I don't think colleges and hospitals are working from home.
No, but colleges to an extent, hospitals, I guess you're right.
Okay. I'll disagree with you on that number, and how you calculate.
I hope you're right.
Well, so do
I'll
I.
be frank, I hope you're right.
So do I. I pay attention to the markets and the way that, employment trends are. So, I guess we'll disagree on that number. Can you answer this question? Are we tracking 2022 adopted?
I'm sorry?
Are we tracking the 2022 adopted budget? I
Like-
mean, like, are we on trend for?
Oh, I think we are, right?
Point of information.
Like how,
It would be nice to have that budget report. I've asked it several times so that we can follow that.
It's not a point of information.
like,
So are we tracking on trend for 2022?
yeah, yes, for the most part. But what I'd rather do is say that now, but let me get you an exact report.
Okay, thank
And
you.
we'll post online too.
Thank you. I know that last night, we just approved basically a 2.5% raise for 1,600. But it looks like we're having a 10% personnel increase, dollar-wise, year over year. Can you expand onto that?
Personnel service, you want to hit on that? Yeah, I'll let you hit on that.
So it's kind of just based on department. There is, as you saw in the positions, there's some departments have additional positions, but some of them are just increases. If you want, I could tell you like the top 3 departments that have increases.
Sure.
So there's the mayor's office, which is about 500,000. There's the police patrol bureau is about 385,000 over last year, and then the law office is about 250,000.
Through you, Madam Chair, didn't we have a negative 2 headcount in the police, but they're raising?
Yes, we did.
So can you explain that to me?
I would have to look at the details. I do know that some positions are in other funds, so the number in different funds may have fluctuated, because they have the public safety millage and the neighborhood policing millage.
While you're speaking of millages, just off topic, do we know when those expire?
Yeah, the police, is it police? We have one that's going to be on the November ballot, and I believe that's police.
What's the implications on that?
Oh,
Because
Yeah.
you have that passing in this budget, right?
yeah, it's assumed that that continues on, yes. What I'll do is pull the exact number that brings in for the police department, and that, if it were to fail, that would be drastic.
What are we doing to get the word out about the importance of that?
I would almost defer to Chief on that one. The neighborhood policing, that's the neighborhood police, brings in 1.66 million. So it would be at least a hit of that.
That's the one that's on the November?
I believe so, yep. That's a special property tax levy.
Okay. So overall, while we're on personnel, this is going to be kind of a broad question, and hopefully you can somewhat expand on it, even though this was pre your time, Mr. Whittigan. The personnel expenses have risen 4.5 million ex-pension in the past from 20 to now 23. And I don't think that the services or the quality of life for residents have been equal to that amount, meaning they haven't, obviously, there's no better services that we've gotten in the past couple of years. How can we explain that to the residents, that the government's growing, yet the services and the quality of life within the city, I think we can all state that it's probably been in decline over the past 3 years.
One, I'll circle back. Jen flipped to the millage part. Public safety millage is 6 mills, and neighborhood policing is 2 mills. And I'll get you the numbers on that. But the main driver of our costs increasing is really due to pension funding or pension
But that, I
contributions
said that
coming
was
up.
ex-pension, so 4.5 is dollars outside of the pension number.
Okay, I'm sorry, which?
So if you go from fiscal year 20
Yep,
to proposed 23, and this is ex-pension dollars, is $4.5 million.
you're talking about personnel services, right?
Correct.
Okay. Right here.
Yeah,
27 to 23.
yeah, but I'm deducting the additional pension, so it's 4.5-ish.
This one to this one.
So that's a difficult conversation about how we're in a negative $15 million projected deficit, that is, or 14 million on this, when
Okay, I'll let you in.
we have personnel costs of $4.5 million, but we can't explain those services.
Well, I would say part of the reason the actuals are low is just due to vacancies. So we tend to budget for the positions that we intend to fill, but then not all those positions are filled or stay filled.
Probably what a better comparison would be is if I were to pull the FY '20 adopted budget number, right? So the first two columns are actuals as in what's the audited numbers. So, and I don't know it's off the top of my head, but the personnel services FY '20 could have been budgeted at 24 million, but in actual, with vacancies, it came in at 18.
So,
If that makes sense.
so have we filled $3 million worth of vacancies for between 21 and the adopted 22?
Well, what I'm trying to say is what's budgeted is a
Yeah.
conservative approach that should these vacancies start to be filled.
Well, that's why I was asking if we were trending for 2022, because that was a 21 number, 21.5, which is $3 million over 21 actuals. So did we fill $3 million of vacancies where we would be trending for 2022? What I'm getting at is the $14 million number real? If 2022 comes in at 55 million, the way it did 21, if we're trending towards those numbers, then the $14 million isn't real. You follow where I'm coming from?
Yeah, I do. And what I would say to that is, so this budget, as we know, is a snapshot. The budget's only as good as the assumptions that are being made. So this budget, as presented to you, is a snapshot in time from what we see. So in other words, we did a cut to revenue sharing. That might not come true, right?
I agree with that, but if we were trending 60 million, 59 million for 20 and 55 million for 21, are we really trending $15 million higher in 22?
I hope not, but the way
So
pension is going, it is driving that up.
So are you saying that potentially we are not trending for a $13 million deficit for 22?
Well, you mean not deficit, but revenues under
Correct.
expenditure?
Well,
Yeah. Change in fund balance, drop
Sure,
in fund balance.
sure.
I would say we're trending for a very high drop in fund balance. I hope it's not 13, but it's looking to be pretty high. Mainly we've lost revenues from the pandemic, pension costs. So either way, even conservatively, we're looking at a $14 million deficit, a $15 million deficit in '24. Even if we don't trend as high, we're not off by 15 million, right? Maybe 5 million less, so $10 million deficit. Either way,
Mr.
we're
Pfeiffer,
trending for pretty bad news.
I've got an Excel spreadsheet of the January budget report that he provided, and by extrapolating out the expenses through January, our expenses would be 32 million. If the total expenditures are correct at 19 million, and then our budget for the expenses was 71 million. So I don't know how close that is, but that's what the budget report shows for January. Does that seem right, Mr. Whittigan? Because I think that's where he's going.
I would have to double check some of that. I know there's a lot of entries that kind of get done later. For example, we were trying to look at, in here we have some numbers for transfers using up some of those internal service fund reserves. So some of those entries didn't get done until the audit was done, so we could see where the balances were. So some of that will go up now that we've had a chance to book those entries.
I'm sorry, I'll give you the floor back in just a minute. I just want to make this comment before I forget. And that would be great if those could be done on a monthly basis so that we could have a better feel of what the budget is to the actual.
Yeah.
Okay?
Because this body potentially has to make very difficult decisions, and we're basing that on potential numbers that are going to be off if we're not trending the way that 22 is. So can you work up some kind of a spreadsheet for this body about if we're trending truly? I mean, we don't need to, I just want to know how close we are, because we potentially have to make drastic cuts.
Right.
So.
Yeah, we could do cash flow with these categories that you see and send that over.
Okay. Even if it's, obviously we're April, so maybe if we can just get first quarter
Yeah,
in those categories, that would be great.
sure.
I know state revenue is what it is. What revenue is the city getting from the marijuana? What benefit, or what, because we only get a portion of the 6% tax, what, is that broken down? How are we calculating that?
$282,617.87 is what we got
For,
for recreational marijuana.
for,
For this payout, last year was only 85,000? Yeah, it was only 85,000, but
so.
the licenses are
So
up.
let me get this straight, because I hope a lot of people hear this. So last year, we got 200 and some change $1,000.
Yeah, I'm trying to make sure I got my years right. So it's for fiscal year 20,
Be fiscal year 20.
we just got the check the other, like a month
It'd be
ago.
fiscal year 21,
Yeah, so
right?
21, so 22 hasn't been paid out yet.
Wow. That's disappointing.
Can you repeat that number? You don't have to get down to the
Oh, man.
cents.
282.
Wow. I was expecting a bigger number.
Well, it's based off of licenses, and I'll check the report. I don't think there was a lot of licenses recorded at that time. There's, I think, some before you, right? So theoretically, I would like to see that if it trends, and I'm just speaking revenue, I'm not speaking pro or against marijuana, hopefully that doubles if more licenses get approved. We're not Lansing, but Lansing was 280-something last year, and then this year they got a check for 900,000. So if that trend continues,
If the grower, and you might not know this, if the grower is owned by a dispensary, how is that taxed?
I'm not sure, I'd have to look into that.
Okay. If you don't mind, I would just like to I have a question for Lee. If Lee can come up, is that okay? Lee, I'm not going to put you on the spot too much, I promise you. So Lee, I see that your budget is roughly 1.6-ish. Can you expand on, how many people do you have in your department that work under the facilities maintenance?
3.
3. Obviously, you got about $1.4-ish million for actual expenses in that category. So what projects are you planning or have planned for budgeting in that 1.4?
We're looking at that roof in the south building that we had brought
That
forward.
should have been last year, right? We wouldn't have adopted that for '23.
It didn't get done. It got turned down.
We ended up approving it.
No.
No, that one didn't pass.
And I'm planning on doing elevators,
These elevators?
the 2 main ones. That's my big goal. I'm trying
So,
to get.
so the 1.4 is the roof, both elevators, that's going to happen in fiscal year '23?
And we're looking at, yes, and also looking at hopefully the boilers. That's what I'm trying to. We're getting prices right now, actually.
Okay. What, can you tell me what obviously it's right about the same number of 1.4. What is and I wasn't here for that budget committee, but what projects did we do in fiscal year '22 for that 1.4? Can you recall? I mean, we're currently in it, so what
Right.
projects do you have that are already budgeted out?
I believe we did a roof at a different site. We did a big project at at Haskell, one of the other sites. We still have Haskell, Brennan, Burston. Nolan takes care of that, so we don't do much there. But a few of our senior buildings we do, and then obviously work.
So
here.
majority of that, is that roofing or you're talking about, or that's just general maintenance costs?
No, we did a roof. I don't remember what it was now price-wise, but we did do a roof. Then we did a lot of electrical. We did the doors, wipes. That was a project, the
Okay.
Brevo at City Hall, the fire station.
I don't know that we have key fobs yet, so I don't think
Oh.
that project's done.
Yeah, okay. That's IT. IT passes those out, so.
All right. All right, thanks, Lee. I just want to know what projects we have, because I think that we have a crumbling facility, so
Yes.
I want to, if anything, I would, and I'm glad that you mentioned the elevators, because we get stuck in it every day.
Yeah, it's been we've been trying to do it actually, we bid it out. I think it was 2018 or 19. It was going to get done, and then it got canceled.
So even though this is council chambers, if we wanted to replace the seats or whatever, would that go under your budget, or would that need to be under council's budget?
Under me, us.
It'd be under you?
Yep.
Okay. All right,
The blinds were under us, the dome, the remodel of the dome.
okay,
You know, pretty much everything that gets done in the building's under maintenance.
okay, perfect. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Mr. Whittigan, I think I just have one question and one final question regarding and I don't see it anywhere on the budget, but it is part of it's listed under the personnel, the DDA. Can you tell me, is any of that DDA funds part of this? So I know they're running a negative deficit, so who has to fill that negative deficit?
Yeah, DDA is not part of this budget, that's correct. They adopt their own separate budget,
So,
which I don't oversee.
because we got Kira May's name on here as, in the DDA as the personnel, so I just want to make sure.
I'm sorry.
It's on the first couple of pages where it lists all the department heads.
Oh, okay. Do I have the wrong person?
No, you have the right
Oh,
person.
sorry.
I'm asking why,
We just put them, yeah, they're not, I see what you're saying. They're not part of our budget, but we did just list them just,
so I know that they were running a negative deficit, so who pays for that negative deficit? Because it does, even though it's a separate deal, how does that work?
so if I understand.
Because I believe we wrote them a check, or
Right.
we fund them, right? Any negative deficit, we pay for salaries, any negative other than the parking meters, correct?
Yeah,
So why isn't that part of this
Essentially-
budget?
yeah, if they do run a shortfall, it would have to hit the general fund. We can't just let them, not pay their bills. Well, we haven't given them, they have not received any funds from the city as of yet.
To date in the history of time?
I would have to check that one, but I'm saying recently.
Okay. Because last time I checked, they were, but we're covering are we paying the bond or paid the bond on the parking garage, but yet they're reaping the revenues off of that?
Yes, we pay that bond, but then they give us a portion of the debt payment back with whatever tax capture they have.
Does that equal out?
No.
So, can we get a copy of the DDA's budget? I don't know if that's publicly available on any website or anything.
I'm sure we can get I don't know if they've adopted it, but I'll reach out and get that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, so I guess it's mine now. You did answer a lot of my own questions, especially the charges for services, and I appreciate that. Obviously, I had that number calculated on my sheet, so I knew how much the difference was. So let's go to the income taxes, and I'm going down line by line, basically. Income taxes, the people who are, Lee, don't go far, I got a question for you, maybe I'll add. All right, let me ask you this first. This is from Ms. Burns, who had to go to another meeting. Her question is, the $160,000 from the audit for credit card purchases, have those been resolved?
I'm sorry, the credit
There
card?
was $160,000 from the audit in regards to the department for credit card purchases? That's what she said, and I don't remember that amount, but,
Yeah, I'm not sure, that's the first
All
I've
right.
heard of it, so.
Are you,
that's from the audit that she was
is it
questioning.
from the findings where they were talking about the P cards?
Yeah,
So we did go through and ensure everyone, or we are going through and ensuring everyone has the latest and most up-to-date policies signed. So there were some employees that hadn't signed the new policy, so we basically said, sign it or we're going to cut your P card.
sounds like a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's all that for me on that. Okay, so let's go to income taxes for those people who are work from home, whose employers reside in Flint, and they work outside of the city. So if they come into the city, then they have to pay a 0.5% income tax. Now, I work for an employer in California. I don't have to pay some of their taxes because my job was designed to be remote. It's always going to be remote. These people who worked remote during the pandemic, does the statute say that their regular place of work location, so that they have to pay the city tax, or is it where did you work? Because I know that I've had to indicate their regular location for my clients.
Yeah, I'm not entirely positive on the Income Tax Act language. What I do know, we actually just had a call with some of the 24 income tax cities across the state. And what a lot of cities are running into, like Detroit, you can get a refund if you work remote. Lansing, the same thing. If you work
Right.
remote, you
Grand
fill out a
Rapids.
form and submit it, and then you get a reimbursement from the city. I don't know if that answered your question. I'd have to look up the Income Tax Act to see if it,
Okay, so what they're saying basically is that if you can calculate how many days, this is
Right.
this is the nerdy income tax preparer. Calculate how many days you were on site, how many days you were off site, and then you can ask for your refund.
exactly, yep.
Okay, I don't like that so much for our city. If I was on the other side, I would love it, and as a tax preparer, I love it, but
Right.
as a council member, I do not. All right, and then one of the other things that I have a concern with is our fine and forfeitures. Down to $52,000. What the heck? Where's that, what does that money consist of, and why is it going down from 106 down to budgeted for 23 to 52?
We based that basically on the trends and what we had already collected so far for 22, for 22 when we decided what to budget for 23.
And in 22, we didn't have a blight court. So there was no enforcement of those fines, correct? That's my understanding.
We didn't have, I'm sorry, I missed the first one.
We don't have a blight court. So there has been no enforcement.
so.
So we've got, so it's,
This fund, this revenue is specifically, from the district court.
oh, from district court, okay. So, and they weren't really in acts, and so that could be it's a minuscule amount, but it is possible for that. Interest, we know, other revenue. So personnel, we've discussed frequently. I am very concerned about these health navigators that the mayor was talking about in regards to his budget, going from a grant to general fund money. I don't see how we can fund that. I don't know how we can afford to add 7 people in the mayor's budget to cover that issue. I almost feel we need more people in the police department than in a health navigator, although there is issues with lead, et cetera. I hate seeing that money coming out of the general fund, if we can get that grant funded. And I don't want to see 7 additional people. One of the problems that I have with this is that I did not see grant-funded positions versus general fund positions. So all of a sudden, we have these 7 additional people in the mayor's office that were grant-funded, and now they're general fund. So, I mean, we got a plus 23 positions full-time overall in the budget for this year, or for 23. And, okay, 4 of them are yours. I'll go along with that, but shouldn't some of those, how many, there's 1 less police officer that the accountant would be coming to you, so, and then we, for the civilian, and the civilians go up by 3 in the police department. So it's got some little issues there that I see. I like the fact that we're bringing the accountants from off in the other departments back into finance, because I think that's where they belong. You need a centralized location. Send your bills in, we'll take care of them type thing, you know? Now, so, like I said, most of my questions have been answered. Let's talk about the ARPA dollars. From our conversation, Mr. Whittigan, with Brian, I'm not even going to try to say the last name, we're trying to get that 94 million into 400 million plus, correct? As much,
Yeah, as much as we can.
as much as we can. Is it not true that if we put it towards balancing or reducing the deficit for 2023, we can't do that? Because the money will be spent?
Yeah, in theory, you're not, any dollars put into the budget, there's not going to be no multiplier effect on those, right? It's just dollar for dollar.
And our best use of those dollars is to use the multiplier effect.
Yeah, I mean, we would like to leverage as much as we can. I mean, good example is the blight, right? 16 equals 45, 16 million, 45 million. So that's your biggest bang for the buck, yes.
Yeah, and so I'm not in favor of using ARPA dollars to necessarily balance the budget. Number one, it just kicks the problem down the road. And number two, if we sit there and throw it at wages, which I think that everybody deserves a raise in this city. I mean, well, yeah, in the city, but not only that, but employees of the city. But if we can't sustain that income or that expense for those wages, and we're just using a one-time dollar, what happens to those wages? We just added to our deficit. And it just doesn't make sense to be using that money if we can't make it up. So I'm not in favor of that, of using that for that purpose. I want to leverage it as much as we can. Let's take some of, if we can take, and we can do budget amendments after June, when we adopt the budget, right?
Right, yeah, yep. So if we use ARPA dollars, we will, that will come through all of you as a budget amendment, correct?
Because I can't see us getting through the proposals that are going to come from the administration with consultation from myself and Dr. Lewis. I can't see that getting done by the first week in June.
Okay, right. I mean, ideally, yes, but if not, then we'll do it through budget amendments. Correct.
And so I'm not so concerned about throwing any ARPA dollars into the budget that you've presented us. I do anticipate seeing some of the equipment budget from the police taken out, put into ARPA dollars. So that will help us
A bit, right.
in that fund. But those are my main issues at this point. And I know we're going to talk about MERS next week,
I think it's
Or-
May 12th is
May
what we're shooting
12th,
for.
okay.
And that's going to be our big conversation with you and the finance chair, too. I mean, it's all about MERS, so.
Right. And I'm curious, Amanda?
She's getting her steps.
I'm being easy today. How many water shut-offs have we had? Do you know?
We're doing 80 a week, and I know, like, this week, we didn't do as many because we went through the cycle that we went through.
Do you know the exact date it started?
Like the second or third week in January.
Okay, because I haven't heard any complaints or anything. Are people, as a result of that shut-off notice, are they paying their bills or working on it?
Yes, in fact, I just looked at the ones that are due next week, and the ones that I sent out, there was 440 notices that I sent out, and I just ran the report to see how many, so there was only 368. So I've had, about 80 people have paid, but they're not due till next week. So, I mean, I'm hoping for another 100 or so to, I always hope for at least half of them will pay.
Yeah, because what's concerning to me is is that the enterprise fund? Is that what it's called? The deficit is terrible. I'm almost as concerned about that as I am about the general fund. So that was one of the questions the water issue, and I'm going to say it again, this is my niece's house. She owes $4,000 in water, hasn't made any attempt since she moved into that house to pay water.
I have many accounts like that.
She only paid the minimal amount to get it turned back on. And so it's grown and grown and grown and grown. And that's unsustainable for the people who have water, and whether it's in the homeowner's name or a renter's name, it's unsustainable. And it's something that we can't let keep going on that often. But I know that you've got a limit on that. That was one of my questions. Outside of that, one of the things that's been bothering me, Mr. Wernigan, too, is the contracted employees. Thank you, Amanda.
Okay.
Is the contract services. I've always seen them separated out in budgets. Like how many full-time employees, how many FTEs do we have for that are contract services, whether it's with an agency or direct?
You're right, those are not included in our personnel figures. It's like a Robert Half temp is not in these.
Who I've worked for.
They've helped us out a lot.
How many, do you have any Robert Half or account temps now, or any other temps?
It's, in our department, I don't think we don't have any. I think we have one helping out with the retiree reimbursement,
But.
healthcare, but not many.
Okay, because
Not many.
that's important, because I know the cost of Robert Half compared to what an employee would receive, and it's outrageous compared, we would save more money by hiring somebody, and they don't get paid that much.
A lot what we have been utilizing in my department, I think, is 2 former city employees that are willing to come back out of retirement to help
And working
out.
through a temp agency.
Yeah.
But that,
Versus
I
a
mean,
temp, right.
we're just using Robert Half as an example.
Right, yeah.
It's just.
There's others, right.
Right. And it's not just in accounting. They have clerical services, and they have.
Right.
But, so that's important. We don't know those numbers. So I don't feel that the full-time positions that we have are clear.
Yeah. We could, talk to HR and try to get a figure for you to send over.
Yeah, because, I mean, and those costs, are they showing up? They're not showing up under personnel services, am I correct? They're under the second line, the
We
the
throw them
supplies and
in-
operating
Yep,
expenses. See,
exactly.
to me, that's a personnel expense. You know, that doesn't make sense to me. That would be under supplies and operating expenses. You know, to me, operating expenses are things like your overhead and what it costs to run the city, rather than because that's a personnel expense. So that's been one bothering me as well. So I don't feel that I have a true understanding of the number of positions we have in the city.
Yeah, and comments like those are always welcome, because we used to include pension, OPEB costs was just all lumped in with personnel services. Now it's listed right here, you know, so we're always making changes to try to make it easier to read.
You don't want to know what kind of budget I'd really like to see, do you?
Probably not.
You know, because I would like to see personnel costs, including pension, you know, here's the taxes, here's the pension, here's health costs, you know, supplies, you know, office supplies, whatever else, and then any of operating. How much does it cost us to run the city? How much does it cost to heat the building? What can we do? Is it, especially today, is it cheaper for us to put new windows up here than it is to heat? Or in any of the other offices? How much would the savings be versus the cost of the windows? And I think that's something that we need to really look at. Because I just read where Consumers is taking 3 coal plants out and the cost is just gonna, our energy costs are just gonna continue to rise. So those are the kinds of things that I would like to see. But any other people any other comments? Mr. Murphy?
Yes. Can you, in the audit, you
Yeah.
talked about the 18 properties.
Yeah.
Can you, explain, what is you guys plan for, disposing of those properties? Are they up for auction? They up for sale? Because I know that was one of the things that they looked at that need to be taken care of, and that's been on the books for a while. I think we have, I seen one on the agenda last week. I believe we approved that one, the sale of that property. So probably for the last 3 or 4 years, we have taken in properties from the Genesee County Land Bank that has been on the books. And I don't know whether residents is living in those properties or not. I'm not sure if they have put funding in a escrow to pay for taxes. So do we have 18 properties that people are living in that they are paying taxes or not paying taxes, or the taxes are being set aside in escrow, or do we have 18 properties on the book? I think Jefferson School is one.
Mm-hmm.
No one is in that, so I'm sure that's, what is the plans for that?
So I'm way out of my wheelhouse on this one. It would be, Suzanne would definitely be your expert on it. But when we were talking through the Genesee County Land Bank properties earlier in the year, I remember talking to Suzanne, and if I recall correctly, when we obtain any properties, we have to go in and ensure it's not occupied, evictions, and board them up and make them safe, is what I believe our conversation was. I can talk to Suzanne and get that answer, though.
The other question, and this go back to, I think Mays and Pfeiffer wanted to start bringing back in Genesee County Land Bank properties, bringing it back in-house. Is there any plans for the city of Flint to work with that request that they requested to start bringing back land bank owned properties, well, not land bank owned properties, foreclosed properties, because we get first rights of refusal.
Correct.
So is there any plans to try to work to bring that back in-house?
Not that I'm aware, however, I do believe, in talking to Amanda, we were going to send the list, when we get the list from the county of properties that are about to be for first right of refusal, send it up to you guys when we get it. But to my knowledge, there's no plan on taking on properties.
Okay. My other question is, the NSO officers that go out and give tickets to commercial residents or residential residents, do you know how much revenue has been generated through that process of them doing tickets? So they may do a ticket. Are people actually paying the ticket, or are they just getting a ticket? Like I'm getting a ticket every time I park in front of a meter.
I got a ticket
about
just the
3 or
other
4
day.
days later, I'm getting a ticket.
Sorry, so what I'll do is I'll pull that exact revenue. So you're talking revenue that NSO officers bring in?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll send that out to everyone.
I'm interested in seeing how much revenue is generated through y'all lovely NSO officers in y'all ward giving tickets.
Point of information,
Come on,
What's your point?
come on with it.
like, how much is paid, but are we tracking on how much is not paid? Meaning how many tickets are thrown in the trash and not collected upon?
Okay. Well, when it comes down to answer your question for me, with the parking meter, mines is thrown in the trash for the parking meters, because it's ridiculous how many tickets. So just for the record, I ain't paying all of them tickets, and I know I ain't the only one.
Point-
That thing do not be working.
The,
That meter thing don't be working out there. It be spitting my money back out. I am not about to be calling no 1-800 number.
just really
Anyways.
quickly though, the meters, that's DDA stuff, that's not NSO
But
stuff.
we still, DDA still part of the city of Flint. So regardless of whoever, I ain't about to be paying them tickets.
Well, but so I guess for clarity for the CFO and I guess for the rest of us then, so do you want the revenue from NSOs or do you want the revenue from NSOs plus meters?
Well,
Because those
to
are probably
answer your
different.
question, my original question was the NSOs, but when Pfeiffer brought up the tickets that ain't being paid, I thought about my ticket from the parking meter, so I just thought I threw that in. So that was just
Okay,
a friendly joke.
I can ask, I don't know, I can ask for DDA too, parking.
Yeah, and then for the parking meters, ask them, can y'all budget to get a bulldozer to tear all of them parking meters? For real, that stuff is a joke.
Blake
And I know
wants
I'm
one.
not the only one that's out there getting tickets and putting money in them things, and they're spitting money back out, and I'm getting a ticket. All that stuff, to me, them was designed to give us tickets to pay for this deficit that the DDA is dealing with. Because as long as I've been coming down here, I ain't never had them many tickets come in the mail, and I be keeping money in my car to put in there. And ain't nobody finna keep on messing with them raggedy meters.
Yeah,
They need to do something about that too.
I personally got a ticket, and I also, and for I have a photo on my phone for the date I got the ticket that says it's free parking, so I got to call and figure out what that's about. So I hear you.
Listen, and what I ain't about to be doing, I ain't about to be taking care of I hear what you saying. I be on a mission. I ain't about to be scrambling, trying to find my phone and take notes. I'm trying to go in and get out wherever I'm going. So I know I ain't the only one. So, or some of the grannies that's coming down here, they probably don't even know how to take a picture on their phone. They ain't got time for all of that.
Oh,
I'm just saying, that's them parking meters is a joke. And they need to do something to that. And I ain't voting for nobody for no DDA, nothing until that stuff gets situated. So don't come asking me for nothing. I ain't doing it. I'm done.
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Dr. Lewis has the floor, sir.
Thank you. So, question, and along the line of NSOs, do you all have projected earnings? Well, I guess revenue, not really earnings, because, if they're out and they're actually ticketing, and so I'm not sure what their average rate should be. That should be down. That should be known. So, like, if you work an 8-hour day as an NSO, you should do approximately, I'm just guessing, I'm not even going to guess, X amount of homes and visits. And so when you project we add that up and you project it, what is the projected revenue that the NSO officers could bring in? So we're talking about what's actual. I would like to know what's projected, because I know that if they find, businesses, that could be up to like a $5,000 ticket. And I know the residence ticket can go from like $50 to $250. So those, they add up. So I think if we took a look at the projected, that might help us as well. And it also may give our NSO superiors more incentive to get a policy and procedures manual, and also to push them to do more tickets. Because again, that's a lot of money. If I go to five corporations or businesses, that's that's potentially $25,000 in that one day. And I know Second Ward, I probably can go to 5 right now. That's $25,000, Second Ward, one day. So I think that'd be a great idea to look into the projected earnings of the NSOs. Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Mays.
Yeah,
You have the floor.
Mr. Whittigan and Ms. Ryan, correct. I took time and looked in the back at what you had directed me to, and that's not what I'm looking for. For example, in the proposed budget in the mayor's office, it goes from 11 to 18. City council stays at, city administrator stays at 6, city council stays at 3. And then when you go further back and you look at the mayor's office, you see personnel services, pensions, and OP supplies and expenses. The problem when you're doing a budget, and I don't know who's taking care of it, but this thing about put something in writing, I don't know where Janelle went to, but, I'm not like this council. We got staff. We the legislative body. I'm gonna ask staff to put it in writing, and I'm gonna ask the administration to give me the details in a quick return. When you go to page 1, you see names like Melissa Brown. You see names like Clyde Edwards. These are personnel inside that office. And I should be able to know how many they are, what do those 18 positions pay, and what's the title. Do you think that I need to know that in the budget process, Mr. Whittigan? Do you know it?
So you're looking for a list of every employee and their pay? Is that?
In that department, you know why? Because it's governed by the charter. You got 5 appointees that do not have to come before council for approval, and you got 8 department heads for a total of 13. That's why it's important in that department and in the overall budget. When I count more than 8 department heads. I'm hearing the lingo about division heads, but you would consider yourself a head of finance. You're a department, right?
Yeah.
And you would consider the legal department the law department as a department, correct?
Correct.
And you would consider the Department of Public Works as a department, correct?
Correct.
What about economic development?
That falls under, on page 2 of our org chart, that falls under planning and development.
But then they told me up here on the record that it wasn't up under Suzanne.
Are we talking blight or economic
No,
development?
economic development. They say blight is up under the mayor's office. Blight ain't up under planning and development. It used to be. See, so that's why it's important in some areas of the mayor's office for me to have specific names, salaries, and then based upon what I look at, I've got to go look at the human resource records to see if these jobs were posted or was they just brought in without approval of council. So that's a unique department. You have to come and get council approval, correct?
Yes, I got council approval.
All right, I know. And so let me ask you this question. You familiar with professional service agreements, right?
Yes?
Did I say it right? Professional service agreements?
Are you like contracts?
We
Professional
call it
services and
contracts. It
Yeah.
is a contract. And you familiar with a guy working in the mayor's office named Phil Phelps, correct?
Yes?
Do you know if Phil Phelps has a professional service agreement?
I would have to check. I believe he's
And see, that's what I'm trying to do. Because the way it's set up now, Mr. Whittaker, finance goes through your department. Are you familiar with the policy that the mayor can enter into certain contracts and agreements if it's $75,000 or less? Are you familiar with that?
That is our purchasing policy.
But we could lower it to $3,000 as a council. Did you know that?
I would defer to legal on that.
Huh?
I would have to defer to our city attorney on that.
Well, I don't have to defer to him because I know we can put caps on that. If we leave that at 75,000, the mayor, you, or anybody else could enter into a contract for 69,000, 72,000, and we could have personnel popping up left and right. If we lower it to 3,000, 5,000, that would stop. I don't have to ask legal that. I just know that. Now you get them for 2,000, 3,000, it might last a week. You get them for 75,000, 74,000, it could last a year.
Point of information through you
Mr. Murphy?
to the speaker. Do you know where that $75,000 cap came from?
Yes, the council makes ordinances and law and legislation. This is the body that governs that. So I can assure you, the council can cap it off. We done capped off stuff before when it was an abuse. Not this council, and this council might not. But that's problematic when you can have 10 people on a personal service agreement for $74,000. That's almost $1 million. It's problematic. And so that needs to be looked at, in my opinion. And so as we go into this budget, 100% we at the amendment stage. And every time I've done a budget, I've brought amendments. And whether or not a person vote yes or no on an amendment on this body, I sleep well at night because I'll say the previous council, we had 4 yes and 5 no on a blight amendment. 4 yes and 5 no on a public safety amendment, and yet we have not had relief in those areas. So now here we go, a whole nother fiscal year. That council, 4 yes, 5 no. We went through the fiscal year, nothing has been done. We're set to receive another $47 million next month, correct? That's correct. And so when you look at the contract that I think we're going to approve Monday, you got some departments, and some of it could be police, fire, might be customer service. Folks now have been bumped up to $15 an hour. But you already had people at $15 an hour who didn't go up. I want the record to show, I'm going to try it, but I'm going to try to propose a second round of pay for these workers. I think it was about 2.6 or 3 million in the last round. You say good, I did, Janelle. Oh, I thought you was, but anyway, what's your thoughts on that, Mr. Whittigan?
I'm sorry, on what exactly?
Oh, you don't be hearing nothing I say. Ms. Ryan, did you hear my question? What's your thoughts?
I'm assuming you mean our thoughts on additional premium pay?
Yeah,
I mean, I'd like to look at it in the grand scheme of the ARPA budget.
that's correct, and I'm looking at it. That's why I'm talking about it, because we are here today on the grand scheme. Mr. Whittigan, I don't mind repeating the question, but my thing is, this ain't the first. I don't think you sometime, and I could be wrong. I could be 100% wrong, but I don't think you take me as seriously as I would like to be taken in the areas of budget amendments, communicating financially. I don't think you trust my knowledge when you listen to Attorney Kim and others who tell you that this council can't bring financial resolutions. And I don't think you believe that the mayor can veto them and we can override the veto. I just don't think that you take my conversation seriously. One day you might. So when I go through these budget hearing and processes, I'm not just talking to you. I'm talking to the employees. I want them to hear that I want to do a second round. I'm talking to the residents. I want them to hear that I want to fix that police department with civilian personnel. I want them to hear that I want officers to respond in less than an hour or two by putting more on the streets. I want the residents to hear that I want cameras and lightings, and I understand the cost of it. When the chief might talk, one camera, 12,000, 10 of them would be 120,000. 100 of them would be 1.2 million. 300 of them would be 3.6 million. That's important because you can go to some towns and you can speed up and down the street, run a light, ticket come in the mail. See, I got to live in Flint, and I represent people in Flint, and they call me. They call me about people speeding up and down Home Street, Mott. Is anything in this budget dealing with speed bumps that you know of?
Not that I am specifically aware of in this budget.
Then why are you familiar with a cost of a speed bump or something over by El Dorado Drive?
Point of information. Mr. Mays, did you know that the chief has indicated that he's going to be putting portable speed bumps in certain areas?
No, you might. I know what's going on. That's why I'm asking about it. I'm not dumb to what's happening in Flint. I get calls from every neighborhood. I'm talking budget, and what he's familiar with as far as the finances of speed bumps. Because when you put them on El Dorado Drive, my phone ringing for them on Home Street, Mott, DuPont, and it ain't budgeted. So you have no clue where the money is coming from as it relates to this speed bump thing, Mr. Whittaker.
Don't recall saying that. That's not what I was saying. I'm just saying I'm not aware of any particular expenditures in this budget. for speed
Everything
bumps.
costs money. And
Yep.
I don't recall expenditures in the past budget, but they're there. So what I have to do, when my phone rang with residents, I have to question budgetary items. So can we get a amount of money if they're gonna try to do speed bumps in this fiscal year of what they talking and where the money will come from?
I will talk with the chief and Rod Magaha in transportation about speed humps.
Yeah, because I'm into politics, but I ain't into fooling these people, and I have to have an answer when my phone rang. I told the residents, maybe it's a pilot project over off El Dorado Drive. But if we talking budget and finance and services, and you're here, everything is on the table. And amendments now is on the table. And I want to just say this. I'll be watching close the next 30 days. I'll be watching the legal department to see if they draw up the amendments that I request, because that's their job. Mr. Whittaker, are you willing to work with legal and this council on any proposed amendments?
Yeah, I think as I mentioned in my opening statement, we need to work together, so.
Okay, yeah, but that's a common theme. It's a common theme. It sounds good, but when it gets to actually happening, that's where my problems start. You got an administration telling folks, don't talk, put it in writing. You got written requests for information backlogged in the city administrator's department, so it's a good thing. It sounds good. Take a guy like me, for instance. I'm very controversial. It's easy for me to sit and say, let's work together. But I ain't gonna just say that. Guess what I'm gonna say? Let's work together. But for those who wanna cross and attack me publicly, it's on like chicken bones. That's what some folks say. That's what I say. So I've appreciated you here. I already know that we got some lost revenue amendments I'd like to see, millions of dollars. I know it's some crime prevention amendments that I would like to see, because public safety in this community, for me, is number one and number two. There are some blight amendments, because down there in that division or department that Harletta and Clyde Edwards and them run, there needs to be some front-end loaders, there needs to be some trucks, there need to be some personnel hired with CDL license, and also in the ARPA funds, there need to be an amendment of $2 to $4 million for some rehab and new builds. I'm not interested in tearing down $16 million worth of houses and leaving empty lots without putting new houses and doing some rehabs. So public safety and blight, I look for amendments. Do you believe that Ernst & Young will be here Monday?
Yes, they are planning on being here Monday.
And did you read the memo that Mr. Edwards sent saying that y'all will only deal with us on Wednesdays in committee meetings versus Monday meetings? Now, he said, when I asked him, they'll be here Monday. So you believe they'll be here Monday, but Monday ain't committee. Who on this council, if any, have you worked closer with as it relates to Ernst and Young and eligible expenses?
Well, we have met with part of the ad hoc committee. Dr. Lewis wasn't able to make it, and there will be more meetings with the ad hoc committee.
Let me say this. I appointed that ad hoc committee. Ms. Priestley, when you meet with them, and we're in the middle of budget process over the next 30 days, can you in the next meeting immediately give us a report as to what's being said and done?
Absolutely.
And the reason I say that is because I don't want them hiding behind you like there's some excellent communication when I'm requesting that Ernst & Young have a meeting with all of us in the public arena. And when I did the ad hoc committee, the purpose was to have communications, but to immediately, just like in the rules committee, call a meeting of the whole.
Mr. Mays, there really wasn't much to discuss. It was just an outlining of the process and where we were in the process, and to make sure that the council and the administration were aligned as to the priorities. And so we did not talk dollars or cents. It was just a general overview. So there wasn't much to discuss. And the administration was going to work out their numbers, and then we were going to meet again, and then we would have something to discuss. But at that point, there was really nothing to share except that we had a meeting and discussed priorities.
Now, I believe that, but I'm saying right now we're getting into crunch time. If you look at the budget hearing schedule, the last department is scheduled for May the 11th. Today is what? Thursday, April the 21st. By the time we get through with departments May the 11th, I'm not confident that this council is going to have working sessions, and I'm not confident that the legal department going to draft up the proposed budget amendments. I'm just not confident, and the reason I say that is because in finance committee meeting, the majority of this council chose not to discuss on a no vote the budget process. These is budget hearings. I'm using this time now to discuss with the council people who are here the process. And so I'm gonna leave it at that. This was scheduled from, I think, 5:30 to 8:30. I've enjoyed you, Ms. Ryan, Mr. Whittigan. I see Stacy back there. I see purchasing manager back there, Amanda. I've enjoyed you. Lee.
Mr. Mays? We
Yeah.
have two more who would like to speak yet, so.
Oh, well, they can. I'm just saying what I'm saying. People can speak once, twice. Am I the only one who spoke twice? Or?
So far, yes.
I don't think so.
I think you are, except for myself, who's.
Through you to Mr. Murphy, you've
Oh,
only
Mr.
spoke
Murphy did.
once.
You're right, I spoke twice.
That's what I thought.
I'm
Miss
sorry, I misspoke.
Priestley, I'm a little sharper than folk like to give me credit. I don't like to argue day and night. I just like to try to take care of the business. I don't like people messing with me. And it sometimes can be unintentional, but a lot of it is intentional. That's why I talk the way I talk. I don't like different treatment. I don't like people messing with me publicly. I was about to sum up by saying what the process should look like for this council. And I had hoped Mr. Whittigan and the city attorney and others work as a group, even our staff. You can be doing stuff twice that we could already do once if these meetings were conducted, in my opinion, properly. I don't believe we should be sitting here without staff taking notes. I don't believe the city attorney should be absent when he or she could be drawing up amendments. That's what we pay them for. This is a key part of our job. And I done seen council before. You can approve the budget as it's submitted. And I ain't gonna lose no sleep over it. But I think the reason I get elected, because people watch me, even in the budget process. I'm gonna bring some budget amendments if I have to write them on notebook paper. And so that's all I was doing. And then I was thanking them, and I'm gonna get out your hair. And people can speak twice, 2, 3 times, or whatever. But I just don't like people playing me a certain way repeatedly, because I'm not an idiot. Far from it. I was about to say, Lee, I want to look, Mr. Whittigan, as to whether or not I want to budget a worker or two with Lee in that maintenance department. Him and that guy do a hell of a job. But I know the money. And when I see him and watch him over the years, I made a note that I might want to budget a person or two to help them. And so I made that note, and I might try to bring that amendment. What is them salaries starting at? 50,000? And then you put all of the package together, it might be about 100,000 a worker.
I would, I don't have that at the top of my head. I have to pull that for you.
Okay. And so, Ms. Priestley, I appreciate, as Maurice used to say, your indulgement. But I'm pretty sharp, and I do things on purpose. I take myself out the equation many a times just to sit back and look at it. It ain't just with this council. I did it with Kate Fields now. I take myself out the equation. I purposely sit in the audience. I purposely observe. And I'm begging y'all, if you want civility and decorum with me, which is politeness, it go both ways. Now, I don't know what y'all think decorum is, but I done looked it up and down, because it's being much overused and abused coming toward me. So I'm gonna chalk it up as unintentional, but I see a pattern. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And I'm gonna see if I can get them amendments, because time is running out fast. And if we don't get moving on the things we need to do, I'm mighty afraid, like in other years, folks will politic in order to get a budget approved.
Thank you, Mr. Mays.
As presented.
Mr. Pfeiffer?
Thank you. Mr. Whittigan, I just have a few questions, or one real final question. The master fee schedule, do we, this is a long shot, do we have the capability of giving us a revenue for each line item in the master fee schedule?
I'm sorry, I lost the very end of that part.
Do we have the ability in our accounting to give us a revenue amount for each line in the master fee schedule?
Okay. Each one might not have its own account number, but if it does, we can pull it, if that makes sense.
Sure,
Yeah.
certainly. I think that,
It might, yeah, what I'm saying is it might get lumped into another account, so, but if it does have its own line
if
item,
one's
we'll
way
pull
off,
it.
we probably know it's
Right.
inaccurate, right?
Yeah,
Okay. If you could get that, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Because I think that we have to start looking at, maybe we have revenue shortfalls or shortcomings on our own part where we're not capitalizing on the correct dollar amount for our master fee
Right.
schedule.
yeah.
That was really my only question. My last little closing statement would be, I think that to Ms. Priestley's, Councilwoman Priestley's point about the ARPA dollars and backfilling lost revenue, I'm torn on that because I believe that we did have a shortfall, and that is some of our projected deficit. So, and that's what those dollars are for. So while I agree with you, I'd rather use them in the community and whatever we can else to improve the lives of the citizens. I think we have to look at, even if it's the 3 to 8 number that you guys spoke of, I think we have a fiscal responsibility to backfill as many of those dollars as possible. So I look forward to those conversations and those final dollar amounts. But I would like majority of those funds to be in the community.
Right.
You know, whether, you know, I think if we use them in the community for blight or whatever else, I think those dollars will in turn come back to the city with improved tax base, you know, more people moving to the city. So I hope that we can have more of those conversations and more of those expenditures so that we can work long-term to improve our revenue. But in the meantime, I think we have difficult decisions. And that's all I have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Dr. Lewis?
So, Mr. Whittigan, I had a question about the speed bumps. Can you tell us how much they cost?
Probably not.
Not now,
No,
but just later on.
I just had a conversation that, so I'll get back to you on that. I know it won't take long. I know I got the number here pretty close, so.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Murphy, did you have a?
Yeah. I just want to echo the sentiment of my colleague Pfeiffer. I'm with you on that. I disagree, Councilwoman Priestley, with you on not looking at opera dollars to fill in those gaps for shortfalls due to the COVID-related revenue that the city has. That was part of the reason why we received the funds. And I will not be doing my job as a councilman to not look at the shortfall that the city has suffered. So hopefully we'll be able to get 5 votes on council to help you guys in that area. And I'm looking forward to working with you guys with this budget. Thank you.
I'd like to respond to that, to my colleagues' response into using the money.
Okay.
I don't want to see 5 years down the line hearing, we had $95 million and what did we do with it? What do we see in our community? If we backfill, and I'm not saying that the money is for lost revenue, absolutely, but it's also for other things. And I don't want to use it all for lost revenue. And I'm hoping that even the lost revenue dollars, we can get more money. Is that correct from the state and other sources as far as you know, Mr. Whittigan?
Yeah, like we're trying to get some money for blight elimination that would come from the state and we wouldn't use ARPA.
Right, but I'm talking about lost revenue.
Oh,
I think,
yeah, I mean,
think there's some money in the state budget for that and
there's some, like, for example, the revenue sharing, like they're holding it true for the next fiscal year.
yeah, but I was talking about just the ARPA dollars, but
Oh.
we'll check with Brian on that. But, I mean, that's what my big fear is that 5-10 years down the road, you know, they talk about the 100 million for the water, and everybody goes, what happened to it? So if we use it to if we use it to make a difference in our community, where people can see it and say, yeah, wasn't that great that the council agreed to spend the money on this? It's like, I think they're thrilled about the land bank agreement. They're going to see that. It's going to make a difference. I'm not saying that using some money to fill a hole in the budget isn't wise or isn't acceptable. I'm just saying, let's look at where it's going to do the most good and save it, and where we can get more money to make it a bigger pot so that we can do more with. And with that, if anybody else has any comments?
Yeah, I just want to touch bases with you. I don't think any of us, and I don't believe you heard any of us speak on taking the ARPA dollars and funding all of it and if you notice.
No.
I mean, and also, even if you notice how we've been moving, we funded the Miller Road project. That didn't have nothing to do with the deficit or the budget. We just funded the blight. That didn't have nothing to do with it. We also gave essential workers funding. That didn't have anything to do with, so our pattern has not been a pattern of we taking ARPA dollars and using it to fill in shortfalls of revenue shortfalls for the city of Flint. But it is part of a discussion for some of our colleagues that we do look forward, I know I do, look forward to seeing what we can do to offset the city of Flint and revenue loss that they have dealt with because of the COVID. People quit paying their water bill because the governor told people they ain't have to pay their water bill, so they did that. In them doing that, as a result, the water department did not be able to get that revenue that they had coming in because people have quit paying their water bill. Not because they couldn't afford it. I'm not saying some did it because they couldn't. Some couldn't because they lost their job or they was out on COVID. So it did, but then you also had people that just didn't do it because they just didn't do it. And it's not fair that we should be like, okay, we ain't go, so I hear what you're saying. I just want to share space to make sure you understand that that is not what our attention is. And sometimes when you guys do y'all interpretation of y'all delivery of what you think we trying to say, that's not what we trying to say. We trying to say that we want to make sure that we use some of those ARPA dollars to look at what can we do to help the shortfall of the revenue that didn't come in for the city of Flint. That's what we saying.
And that's-
all we asking you to do is come join us and look at it together, but don't say
No.
we taking the ARPA dollars and we that's not our intentions. That's all I'm saying.
I understand what you're
Okay.
saying, and I just hope that you understand that.
Yeah.
I want to get as much money as we can to do everything we want, and
We
that
agree to
includes,
that.
and that includes getting more
that
money
ain't how to deliver.
from other sources for lost revenue. Okay, so if there's no other comments, I'm going to adjourn this meeting at 8:13.
Roll call vote. Roll call vote.
Roll call vote.